Prison is designed to break one's spirit and to destroy one's resolve. To do this, the authorities attempt to exploit every weakness, demolish every initiative, negate all signs of individuality, all with the idea of stamping out that spark that makes each of us human and each of us who we are. This is how Nelson Mandela described his experiences in prison during a time when racial segregation was at a peak in South Africa due to apartheid. He emphasizes that the mistreatment that he and many others experienced brought them together and further strengthened the demand for change. Around the same time period, similar events took place in America in regards to those with disabilities. Since the 1800s, these people have been treated very poorly as they experienced oppression, negative stigma, and social and economic marginalization. Many Americans finally decided to take action in the 1970s, where protests and demands for government reform took place. It wasn't until the year 1990 that the Americans with Disabilities Act was put into place, also known as the ADA. It claimed to provide access to equal treatment, equal opportunities, and access to accommodations. However, as seen in this graph from the U.S. Equal Employment Opportunity Commission, in the year 2020, the highest number of U.S. discrimination claims belonged to those related to disability, with race and sex following closely behind. So, how effective was the ADA? Good morning, my name is Elena Flores, and this poses the question: to what extent have the attitudes towards people with disabilities affected their experience in the American workplace over the past 20 years? After careful research, it can be concluded that society's views on workers with disabilities have continued to negatively affect their experiences in the workplace through bias in the hiring process, mistreatment after being recruited, and lack of effective accommodations. The hiring process is arguably one of the most important parts of entering the workplace, as it is where employers form first impressions and, of course, determine whether or not someone is fit for the job at hand. It is common for companies to view health conditions as deal breakers and take no further considerations to hire those that possess them. This can be due to the fact that they see their needs and deficiencies as setbacks rather than being flexible and striving to find ways to assist them through the working process. This bias seems to be inescapable because it is still evident even in attempts to eliminate it through the use of AI. Meredith Whittaker, associated with New York University, stated that disabled people have been subject to historical and present-day marginalization, and such patterns are imprinted in the data that shapes AI systems. Evidently, AI is still a man-made development, and even slight ideas of discrimination against minorities are bound to be incorporated in its functioning, proving this approach to be ineffective. A result of this hiring bias can be seen in this graph from the U.S. Bureau of Labor Statistics, which compares the unemployment rate of people with disabilities to those without. And across many age, sex, racial, and ethnic groups, people with disabilities consistently have a significantly higher unemployment rate in comparison to those without. In the case that a person with a disability gets hired, they still continue to face many, if not more, problems once they begin working. Overall, there are two types of discrimination that these Americans face: direct, where they are targeted and singled out for their condition, and indirect, where they are treated the same way as everybody else and are not provided accommodations even when asked. Examples of direct discrimination include getting work hours cut and not getting the same pay rate as those without disabilities. According to this infographic from American Institutes for Research, workers with disabilities earn 37% less pay than those without. It is not uncommon for employees with disabilities to experience harassment due to their condition. This can be seen through insensitive comments and jokes, offensive assumptions, the use of slurs, and many more. Not only do these actions create an unpleasant work shift, it also can decline the mental health of these employees, as they are already dealing with their condition, and negative comments from other people can just worsen their situation. On the other hand, but equally as damaging, are the indirect forms of discrimination, which is effectively displayed in the Fraser versus Goodale case, where Fraser sued her former employer for not allowing her to eat food at her desk despite being diabetic and experiencing hypoglycemia, or low blood sugar levels. As a result, she passed out, and yet her former employer still justified their actions by stating that she could have taken time out of her shift to go to the break room just to eat a little snack, enough to bring her blood sugar back to normal levels. This shows the complete overlook of Fraser's condition, which ended up putting her life at danger despite only working an office job. This is just one of the many instances where an utter sense of ignorance is exhibited towards people who may need minor exceptions to be made. Over the past few years, many may argue that advancements have been made to help disabled persons become more comfortable in the workplace. The promises of accommodations, although, have not been kept. and many times they don't end up being beneficial for the employee. This infographic from the U.S. Equal Employment Opportunity Commission covers the topic of reasonable accommodation. And here in the bottom left corner, it gives examples of common types of accommodation, including modifying work schedules, making exceptions to policies or procedures, and permitting the use of unpaid leave. In order to provide proper accommodations for an employee with a disability, employers need to consider what disability the employee is dealing with, how it affects their performance, and what the employee themselves suggests be done. However, there are a few reasons why effective accommodations are not being made. For example, according to the Journal of Autism and Developmental Disorders, it has been found that many employers aren't even educated on how to handle employees that may need accommodations and don't know what constitutes for a reasonable adjustment. In addition, some authority figures don't even put the effort into making accommodations for disabled employees who request for them, which could be due to negative past experiences with impaired people or just a lack of consideration overall. On the other hand, there are occasions where employers force accommodations onto those who are disabled when they don't necessarily ask for them. This assumption can make the employees feel like they are below everyone else and incapable to function without assistance. With this, despite efforts of the public to achieve government reform, the American workplace has continued to exhibit discriminatory practices towards the disabled minority. These attitudes and behaviors can be seen as early as the hiring process and into their daily work schedule through bullying, harassment, and lack of effective assistance. Thank you.
Hi, 2 questions for you. How valid and how valid and reliable were the sources that you used, and how'd you know?
I think my sources were very valid because they came from peer-reviewed research and academic journals, and the sources such as the infographics were from authorized websites and U.S. controlled websites.
Okay, and if you had more time, what additional research would you have done on this?
If I had more time, I would have done more research in regards to the socioeconomic status of these employees and how that also ties into access to treatment of the disabled and how that affects their experiences in the workplace.